Welcome to the Animo Wine Co podcast. I'm David Clarke, your host. Today, in what is quickly becoming an annual tradition, we will be discussing the state of the nation of South African wine. To help us guide us in this task, we again have one of South Africa's most respected wine critics, Christian Eedes. Christian is the editor of winemag.co.za, bringing over 2 decades of experience in tasting, reviewing and exploring South African wines. His palette has not only guided wine enthusiasts, but also shaped the industry's narrative with his insightful critiques and articles. So it should be fun. Join us. Hi, Christian. How are you?
David. Well, and yourself?
Welcome back.
Thank you.
To Wine SONA 2025, where we look back on the last 12 months of wine in South Africa and South African wine. How's your 2024?
These years past COVID are just a joy. The COVID hangover is subsiding and it's back to business as usual.
And what is business as usual? What had changed and now is going back to normal?
Well, I mean, COVID seemed like the end of times, and I mean, it certainly had a huge impact on all spheres of life, professional and personal. The human race seems fairly resilient, and on we go.
Nice one. Okay, so let's start off big and narrow down. Big trends you saw in 2024, or anything notable that happened or is happening?
It was a return to, as I say, business as usual in the sense of refilling the pipelines.
And do you think the industry's been successful at that?
By all accounts, yes. South Africa, in macro terms, has balanced its supply versus demand, which is a hugely positive thing. And at the fine wine end of the market is which Animo and Winemag are interested in. There's
So were you talking about the bulky end?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Macro terms.
All right. Okay.
Total stock versus.
I see.
So apparently, what is available is optimal in terms of keeping pipeline. You don't want too much stock, you don't want too little.
Yeah.
And keeping pipelines full, but not having surplus that you can't move.
Yeah. Okay. And then the fine wine side. Sorry.
On the fine wine side, producers couldn't get their wine out of the country. Domestically, there was an alcohol ban. How to actually move the stuff, and I think that stuff is now moving through the system, which is a good thing. I mean, nothing's perfect, and at the top end, exports are still difficult, and of course, there is a global cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
So and then of course, there's a worldwide movement that sees alcohol consumption dropping, and in particular wine consumption
the
dropping.
anti-alcohol vibes.
Correct.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I probably see it a little bit differently. I think that after COVID, there was a flush of exports, and people were, because obviously the same sort of thoughts that you had, that it was almost the end of times. Let's live it up, almost like the Roaring '20s after the First World War, and then that has now the curve has come down again in terms of consumption, and the market has shrunk again, but all the wines haven't necessarily run out, haven't come through the pipeline. So I think there's still a fair bit of unsold wine, especially from sort of the 22, 23 harvests. Not sure about 24, because obviously these things take a while to come into play. So I think there is still a fair bit of wine out there at the top end that hasn't moved through. I know a lot of guys are starting to consolidate or reduce their overall tonnages in the last couple of vintages due to that. See how that plays out. Anything else big picture that you saw last year or what's happening now?
I mean, your comment is interesting, and that percentage of production that would have gone to export sitting here domestically, it's been pleasing to see how tourism has bounced back post-COVID, and hopefully both domestic and international tourism will absorb some of that surplus.
Yeah, luckily South Africa's still beautiful, relatively safe, and the rand is worth absolutely nothing.
Correct.
So that's really helpful for that. Trends in winemaking, not necessarily in the industry, but in the actual what's in the glass. Was there anything sort of notable that you saw more or less of? Or?
The dichotomy between old school and new wave, and again I'm talking about the top end of the market, which is fascinating. You've got the well-established blue chip brands next to the more experimental labels, and they've both got their place in the market, and they both hopefully will always prevail. And I think it's great in the sense that sometimes you want to drink orange wine at a trendy wine bar, and sometimes you want to drink a well-matured Cabernet with your tomahawk steak.
We've got some viewer questions to get to that have been submitted, but a couple of them we've already touched on, and there's new wave thing that you brought up. Maybe define the new wave as you see it.
So the new wave, it's humorous in the sense that some of the most prominent members of the new wave are are now in their late 40s and early 50s.
To be fair, it's not the young wave.
No, okay. But I mean, the whole movement started circa 2000, so it's now quite well established. But it's more a technique thing rather than a personality thing. So the new wave is, earlier picks in the vineyard, more avant-garde, high-risk winemaking.
In what way?
So, carbonic maceration, low sulfur levels, to name but two, compared to lots of new oak and a more heavier extraction that you would expect from the old guard, if you will.
It's named a wave. So does it keep coming? Does it come in like sets of waves? Is it there and just now part of it, or is it a fleeting movement?
No, great question.
Thanks.
I think it's a wave that hopefully continues to swell, if you will, and hopefully will never crest, to sort of extend the metaphor. I think.
How can we push this?
It should be seen against the background of a industry that had stagnated in the 80s and 90s. So there wasn't much of any kind of movement. It was all a bit rote. I would argue, and then and the political transformation was key. And so South Africa re-entered international markets, and producers had to choose a way forward. And as I say, both approaches, you could stick to your guns and maintain a traditional approach, if you will. Or you could be much more innovative and experimental, and it was a large part of it was about telling your story. So did you want to be seen as sort of blue chip, first growth, reliable, well established, or did you want to be seen as innovative, forward thinking, progressive, rule breaking, and so, and as I say, hopefully that tension will remain. Hopefully we won't become complacent and fall back into doing things by rote.
Yeah, it feels like almost like an era of eponymous brands as well. Like instead of working for an estate, you would make your own wine and name it after yourself in some way, shape, or form. So it's more of a personal representation of or expression of South African terroir than an estate or a region or a...
Definitely, and I mean, I think there are a number of factors to explain that, and land tenure being foremost. If your brand starts with your own personal name, you don't necessarily have to own vineyard, and in not owning vineyard, you've removed a significant overhead. Conversely,
positives and negatives, yeah.
Conversely, you might not always have access to that vineyard, which is
things might change.
Can be problematic.
Is the new wave? Is it still a relevant term now? I mean, obviously there was a breaking of the status quo, as you said, in the sort of the early to mid 2000s. Now, do you see the dividing line as clearly, or we face new wave?
It's interesting to watch in the sense that there are some big names that subscribe to a more progressive approach, and we all know who they are: Sardi, Molyneux, Savage, etc. But as I say, they are, in terms of physical age, they're in their 40s and 50s. So, what comes after them? But I think we're seeing a interesting band rise, coming to the fore of winemakers in their early 30s who can't get jobs necessarily with either the corporates or the well-established privately owned farms, and are compelled to start their own labels. So
why can't they get jobs?
The industry is contracting. We have lost a lot of hectarage in the last 15 odd years, from over 100,000 down to 89,000 hectares right now. and by all accounts, it's still supposed to drop and sort of should level out at 84,000 hectares. So there's the industry has contracted.
And is that sort of fine wine hectarage has been lost, or bulk hectarage? Or?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's more about yield. So when vineyards drop below a economic yield, in terms of tonnage, in terms of actual fruit off the vine, then growers are inclined to pull those out, regardless of the quality of the fruit. So I think we are losing. My sense is that we're losing fruit across the board.
But that's the best guess on that, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody can sort of really corroborate that. But I mean, let's take Old Vine Chenin. I think there's a lot of low-yielding Old Vine Chenin that could potentially make very, very good wine, but it's coming out because it just doesn't bear enough tonnage, and it hasn't got a producer to champion it, and to take it and turn it into something really special and brand it accordingly and sell it at the right price.
Do you think there is more good South African wine available to buy now than any other time in recent history?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
More than last year and more than the year before. Is that a trend coming up, or is it sort of going up and down?
No, I think
with harvests and.
No, vintage variation is a huge factor, and more so than ever. Partly because winemakers are more sensitive to what the particular vintage presents, and therefore how they interpret that. And partly, or maybe this is another way of looking at the same issue, is because of climate change, we've got very varied and very disparate and extreme conditions from year to year. So, it definitely requires the winemakers to think laterally in terms of what they're going to do.
Yeah, and actually be more involved and have boots in the dirt, so to speak. Talking about climate change for a bit. What is there anything about climate change? That topic. I mean, it's a massive, huge topic. Is there anything that sort of moved your thinking forward in the last 12 months on that, or not?
Well, I think we're seeing. So a huge confidence in the South African industry is how adaptive we are, and you hear about what's going on in Bordeaux and Burgundy, and there's a sort of. I get the sense that there's a sort of a panic within the French industry. Weather conditions have changed so dramatically, and there's a sort of resignation to their fate, if you will. Whereas in South Africa, we seem to be more adaptive.
Less constrained by rules as well, in terms of
for sure.
regulations and things.
And I mean,
which can be a good and bad thing.
and I mean, let's not forget that climate change used to be termed global warming, and we realised it was not so much global warming, but extreme weather events. But nevertheless, the planet is getting hotter, and South Africa has always been a warm climate growing area, generally speaking, and therefore the challenge becomes, one of the key challenges is water management, and I think there's some very progressive thinking going on in that regard.
Like what?
First of all, if you don't have to irrigate, then don't. Well, then you're way better off. So plant accordingly. The less water you need to use, the better. And that also brings up the issue of drought-resistant varieties. And so hence the rise of all the Southern Rhone varieties, hence the rise of Assyrtiko.
Yeah, Grenache is not coming; it's here, for example.
I mean, it's coming off a small base.
You're seeing more and more of them, though.
Yeah, seeing more of it.
Do you like them?
Very much so.
Okay. What's attractive about these?
Well, they're just essentially because they seem suited to the climate. So you're seeing, Grenache Blanc seems to really love local conditions, and it essentially, I mean, there are many reasons. I think it suits our cuisine. It fits. There's a good cultural fit. But essentially, it keeps its acid under warm growing conditions, and same with Varietal.
No, I was more talking about Grenache Noir.
Grenache wine.
Yeah.
You know,
Because Grenache Blanc's been here for a while. Obviously, it hasn't increased in plantings until recently. But Grenache Noir obviously been here for a while also, but older clones. So there's newer clones coming in of Grenache Noir now, more sort of quote-unquote fine wine clones, smaller berries, thicker skin, so on and so forth. Have you had many of those wines as yet?
the new clone Grenache Noir.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, plantings are, for both Noir and Blanc, are extremely small, but they do seem to attract our very best winemakers. And why is that? Because I think there are, you know, the climate conditions. I mean, you know, Grenache is a southern Spanish, and you know, there's a centuries to similar growing conditions to what we have here.
And do you think it's there's another variety or varieties losing ground to it? So if you're planting something, my sense is that Cinsault is not being planted as much as it ever was, and people are choosing to plant Grenache in the same spot where they once maybe Cinsault.
I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, Cinsault
I
planting...
have zero facts to back that up.
The Cinsault plantings significantly...
What's new?
Are significantly bigger than Grenache
Yes.
to date.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're already in the ground.
Yeah, to some extent. But
Yeah.
I suspect there's more. There's new Cinsault again. No facts to back it up. But I think I suspect growers are planting Cinsault as much as they're planting Grenache.
And the sort of the other quote unquote Mediterranean varieties, like sort of the Greek varieties, and
Look,
people are playing
the
with
massive issue is, you know, however well suited a Certico may or may not be, how the hell do you sell a Certico when in a world that still wants to drink Chardonnay and Cabernet, you know,
Sauvignon Blanc.
and Sauvignon Blanc. And on that note, I keep making this point. You know, as of 22, Sauvignon Blanc overtook Colombard to become the second most planted variety in South Africa. So, you know, there are macro commercial realities. We can geek out about Grenache Blanc and Roussanne and Marsanne, but the punters want to drink Sauvignon.
I'm surprised there's still that much Colombard in the ground as well.
I think it goes to why Colombard was planted in the first place, and we're still a large part of the industry.
Yield essentially.
No, yield, and then it goes to distillation.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, but people are saying, from what I'm picking up from the brandy producers, they're saying, well, no, our market's shrinking. Yet the explanation for a shitload of Colombard being in the ground is no, it makes brandy. Like, both of those things can't be true, surely.
Or no, it makes industrial alcohol.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Not necessarily brandy. Okay.
No, not necessarily fine brandy.
I'm with you now. Yeah. Okay, cool. Economic challenges and opportunities.
Well,
any sort of movement there? What's your latest thinking there?
Doing business right now, you know, there are plenty of unknowns. Less to do with South Africa and more to do, as I say, with the global context. You know, we have an ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Finally, Israel-Palestine seems to be starting to resolve. Cooling down, but I mean, you know, you never know when that's going to flare up again. You know, Trump's just come to power. You know, we were chuckling off air about, you know, getting, you know, if the Panama Canal is crucial to your exports, that might become quite tricky quite soon. You know, you will be sailing through the Gulf of America, not the Gulf of Mexico. Canada becomes the 51st state of the USA. You know, so, and that's all well outside my area of expertise, but it's got to be a concerning backdrop, you know, against which to do business.
Last year we had like platitude alerts, if you remember. The world is a dangerous place. It sounds a bit platitudinal. What opportunities are there then?
No, just to cover off on economic threats. I mean,
please.
And we all lived through load shedding, and we saw a switch to renewable energy, and I think the industry, all credit to the industry, is like, you know, they embrace that. And I mean, we've now had, I think it's 300 uninterrupted days of no load shedding, but you know, it's all very fragile. And, you know,
Thanks to in part with a lot of individuals and businesses moving to solar, so that's
that's been
putting
hugely
less pull
positive.
on the
You know, but I mean, you never know when
on the grid.
our major power stations are going to collapse again. I mean,
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a when, not if, isn't it?
yeah. Positives. So of course, 24 saw national elections, and I think that there was a lot of predictable uncertainty and anxiety around that collectively from the nation.
Government of national unity.
Well, so you know, I think everybody were expecting the ANC to come back to power with a reduced majority, but nevertheless a majority, and that didn't transpire, and hence we have the government of national unity. And so far, so good.
Okay.
And I think
Overall, a good thing for the South African wine industry.
yes, I would say so.
Okay.
Because there's a sense that instead of being in limbo, to put it diplomatically, as we were with the ANC, stuff might actually get done now.
Let me just unpack that for a second. What do you mean by in limbo? I mean,
well,
the ANC didn't like the industry, but they liked the revenue.
I don't want to upset our ANC-aligned viewers, but you know, we went through.
I don't mind. I don't vote anyway, so I can't vote. Not allowed to.
No, look, there's a sense that I mean, we've got a non-ANC Minister of Agriculture, whether you like him personally or not, and you know, he seems favourably inclined towards the wine industry. I'm talking about John Steenhuisen. Look, a lot's got to play out, but I think there are reasons for, as I said at the outset, reasons for hope, for optimism.
He seems like he's on agriculture's side, which is probably not the historical situation for other ministers of agriculture in the past.
Debatable and possibly not relevant to this particular conversation. I mean, you know, we've got, you know, previously disadvantaged small-scale black farmers that certainly need to be part of the conversation, versus well-established, you know, white-owned farms in the winelands. You know, how do you work equitably between, you know, both those?
Make room for both without being too autocratic.
Yeah.
Talking about that, the changing profile of the SA wine consumer.
So, post the general election, with the optimism that came as the GNU manifested itself, I think that we are seeing, or by all accounts, there's a growth in consumer confidence, which has got to be good for the wine industry. And similarly, we are seeing the emerging black middle class is exciting and expanding rapidly, and which means potentially more consumers who will engage with fine wine. Because I think, you know, bluntly put, the fine wine domestic market has been very white for a very, very long time. The market segment is not increasing, and you know, who's the industry going to sell to, if not the emerging black market? And so I think a key talent, and really this is perhaps the crux of this year's SONA.
I have my pen ready to write this down.
Is how do we engage, you know, how does a largely white industry engage with a largely black consumer segment? And I think we as an industry, you know, have sit two pale males.
But if you frame it by race all the time, then it's always going to be separate.
We don't have to frame it by race. We need to frame it by, please don't accuse me of being woke. I'm proudly Gen X. I don't believe in anything.
Mate, you are a bit woke.
Well,
It's okay.
no. If wokeness,
I still love you.
If wokeness, if wokeness equates to don't be a puss, be lekker, then I could definitely work.
But as a wine communicator, this largely falls within your sort of purview.
This may reflect badly on me, but I've got no idea what's going on in the taverns of Soweto or the nightclubs of Soweto. I mean, I've got a vague, hey, they drink Moet and Verve. I mean, do we really know what's going on in the nightclubs of Soweto? And also, if you've got Mother Rock orange wine to sell, how the hell are you going to sell it to them? How do you get them excited about it? How do you go like, mate, no, it's crap. You really should be drinking orange wine from Stompie. I don't know. And we really should be applying our minds to those ideas. Orange wine from Stompie. How do you get them to drink Bellingham or Alto or, Ristenfrede or Canonco?
Make them as attractive as Moet or Verve.
Yeah,
is the answer there.
But we don't have...
In whatever way, shape or form you find things
We don't have
attractive,
Champagne House marketing budget.
No, but you don't have to charge that either. So, they're different price points. So, but I mean, what is Wine Mag doing to sort of try and engage with the emerging change in the socio-economic
Believe
situation?
me, that is top of our to-do list. I
Yeah.
mean, we are strategizing long and hard to solve for that. But a ready solution doesn't present itself. I mean, I don't think there is a silver bullet solution. I don't think there's an easy fix. I suspect it means Christian getting out of his comfort zone and actually spending more time in Soweto nightclubs and finding out what the hell's going on. And yes, David, what's so funny?
No, just putting that in my mind. That's that looks like fun.
No, it could be. It could be a hell of a lot of fun. I'm just not so keen on drinking that much Moet.
Rubbish.
No, come on. I'm certainly not on LVMH's dime. And let's face it, Moet is really crap. There are a lot of Cup Classiques that are way better than Moet.
There you go, there's a clip.
I mean, it's a poor product. I mean, it's all extrinsics and no intrinsics.
What depends on how you classify poor product.
It's not. It doesn't taste very nice.
No, it's a remarkable commercial,
I think, the head of LVMH is the only non-American in the top 10 richest people in the world. So they're doing something right, but I don't want to drink Moet.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I mean, unless someone else is paying for it, correct or not? Or do you just...
No.
Did you go sneaky,
No, really.
sneaky have a little gin and tonic
No.
beer?
So the share of throat, there's another really important way of looking at our industry. Is like, you're not... Thelema is not in competition with the Cravens. And the Cravens aren't... You're in competition, you're fighting over share of throat. And, there's...
Share of throat.
Share of throat.
Okay, right, yeah.
And we should never lose sight of this because, they're...
Brutal way of putting it, but okay.
They're drinking opportunities, And so there's the big brand beer versus craft beer versus gin and tonic, versus spirits. And, I love a gin and tonic. I really do. And South Africa makes great craft gin. So now I'm at the nightclub. Am I going to go for the Moet? No, because I think it's rubbish. Am I going to go for a gin and tonic? And then I've got a choice between big budget imported brands like Tanqueray and Bombay versus local mainstream brands versus local craft brands. And the challenge becomes to make sure that your brand can compete and has enough cachet to be a legitimate alternative to Moet.
Yeah, to be as attractive.
As attractive and be as desirable, ultimately.
Well, yeah, I think we're putting, as an industry, we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. I think we need to concentrate a little bit more on actually putting wine, getting people to drink wine.
No doubt.
And as an approachable, everyday pastime / habit, rather than beer or spirits. I mean, I think the industry has assumed a level of wine consumption that is historic, but is declining. We need more people drinking wine, essentially, and then over your lifetime, you start to appreciate it more.
Totally agree with your last point. Amazingly, because Clarke and Eedes don't often agree. But I think it's easier said than done.
And I made it look hard to say as well.
Everybody likes to mock the success of semi-sweet rosé, and and they're two big brands, and we all know what those are. And that's taking grape. It's taking
What brands are they? Four Cousins or
Four Cousins from Van Leeuwen and 4th Street from Heineken.
Okay.
That's sucking up grapes. But I would, and then the argument in some quarters is that those drinkers will climb the aspirational ladder, and as an industry will be fine. And I think the latter argument is spurious, and I think, semi-sweet rosé is a grape-based alcoholic beverage rather than wine. You might as well see it next to any of the RTDs. And so, to your point about selling wine generically, yes, I think it's an overall industry responsibility. It's going to be difficult because, with it comes ultimately a culture, when it comes to fine wine, of good eating, and it's not necessarily about conspicuous consumption. Some of the labels that wine lovers aspire to drink can be pretty obscure. There's no bragging rights about having them on your table. And how do you overcome all that, and the answer is with difficulty.
That's the changing profile of the SA wine consumer, and it is on the move. It is a very dynamic situation. What about the SA wine producer? Is that changing quite rapidly?
So I think with the contraction of the industry, we're seeing a lot of growers and producers leave the industry, which is obviously extremely unfortunate, if not outright sad.
Who's left that's notable?
At the bottom end, I think, it's well documented how if you were growing grapes, you're now growing berries, nuts, citrus, anything but wine grapes. At the top end, I think we're seeing consolidations, corporates, and I think in particular DGB are buying up vineyard. But we're also seeing, and I think this is a hugely positive development, foreign direct investment. So, international players who are acquiring some of our top properties and have got very big ambitions about what they're going to do with those properties. It's a little controversial in that some sectors of the industry feel like South Africans are selling their birthright. I would just remind them that when Jan van Riebeeck arrived here, he certainly wasn't South African, and I don't really care who owns the vineyards as long as they're doing a good job and employing locals. And
is it similar to sort of to draw a very loose parallel, like the non un-Britification of London? Is that sort of maybe the un-South Africanness of Stellenbosch? Because that's where a lot of the investment's coming in, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, starting with Heineken, it was very much South African owned, and now it's Dutch owned.
Is that the feeling you're getting, or am I missing the mark?
I mean, I don't think it's a perfect analogy. I mean, I don't think we've sort of
not claimed, by the way.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not in. The industry's not about to become entirely owned by Russian oligarchs.
Okay. Full of empty private buildings.
Yeah.
And so, obviously they bring in cash.
Yeah.
And that's the positive.
And very often expertise as well.
Okay.
Expertise. They bring in fresh thinking. They've got consultants from leading wine areas around the world. And,
a range of perspectives.
A range of perspectives, which leads to an exchange of ideas. I can't really see any drawbacks.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. We went to the VinPro Day, what was called the old VinPro Day. Was it after harvest? I can't remember. It was sort of like April, May.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's been some months, and I meant to do a little run, a little synopsis with you about that. 8 months later, or whatever it is, what still sticks in your mind from those presentations?
No disrespect. Well, it's now called Wine South Africa. I mean, under which falls VinPro. Yeah, I mean, I think you need a generic body to drive the discussions between, or to steer producers and growers forward. But I've been attending those information days almost as long as I've been in the industry, which is 20-something years. And my frustration is the conversation is always the same. It's about how unprofitable it is to be in the industry, and how we'll eventually muddle through And my frustration is, one, as I say, how stale the conversation is and how the lack of fresh thinking. And I think what happens at the top end of the industry, which probably aren't sitting on those information days, and it goes towards the divide between commodity wine and fine wine. There's some very progressive, very brave operators at the top end and some quite conservative, backward thinking at the bottom end of them.
And that's a bad thing? Like the disparate nature of those two,
They're not
widening, or
they're not binary opposites. I mean, they're deeply interrelated. But if the bottom end could be...
Do you see unrealized potential there?
I see unrealized potential there. And the global bulk wine market is hardly an area of expertise for me. But, is South Africa performing as optimally as it could at that end of the market? I don't know. By all accounts, we should be trying to get away from the bulk end of the market for obvious reasons. I mean, essential reason being, there are no margins there. But, why haven't we done that in 20 or 30 years of trying?
Okay.
I mean, we still export a huge amount of bulk relative to bottled or to packaged. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not speaking from a position of real knowledge, but I have been watching the conversation for a very long time.
So away from the bulk wine side of things, on the fine wine side of things, what was your takeaways from those presentations on that day?
It doesn't matter that they're farming for wine. It's an agricultural product, and it might as well be potatoes or gem squashes or nuts or berries. It's a pity in that there's no... I think the huge opportunity is beneficiation, and that's like, whether you don't have to operate at 1,000 Rand a bottle, but just don't operate it at 50 Rand a litre.
But I mean, Wine South Africa tends to me, be more based in a sort of the grape growers' point of view. So that's where they're positioned to view from. So they're just looking at the natural product, the primary product.
It gets political, very political, very quickly, and.
Right.
And Wine South Africa's got a constituency, and it wants to keep its constituency happy.
Okay, and that constituency is bulk.
Well, it's growers, and
Okay, and they pay per tonne in terms of their okay. Right, you said Heineken taking over essentially Distel. Good thing, bad thing? Still waiting on the sidelines. Big changes coming.
I'm bemused, and I think the rest of my fellow commentators aren't likewise. Let's be frank, I don't think Heineken bought Distel for its wine assets. That said, what is Heineken going to do with its newly acquired wine assets? And I can't give you an answer. I wish Heineken could be a little bit more forthcoming.
There was a presentation by Heineken at this...
Yes, indeed. And I mean, the upshot of that was the focus going forward would be on, as I recall, popular wine. So there are no ambitions to operate at the very top end, which I think is unfortunate in the sense that it would be really great to see one of our corporates, and with all the clout that they necessarily bring in terms of marketing and distribution.
And access to vineyards.
Take a wine to the world at the very top end of the market.
At volume as well.
At volume. And I always reference Penfolds Grange, and South Africa's never managed to create a Penfolds Grange. I mean, is Columella world class? No question. Is Canoncourt Paul Sour world class? No question. But those volumes max out very quickly in a global context.
Industry moves in terms of maybe winemakers moving.
Industry moves.
Or producers stopping or starting new wines or new lines.
So I think the big talk of the last 12 months was Van Leeuwen's acquisitions. Van Leeuwen owners of Four Cousins, but clearly Van Leeuwen's got ambitions to operate at higher tiers. And
so they bought Neil Ellis, is that right?
They bought Neil Ellis, correct. They had a dalliance with Blauw Klippen, but that has now...
Dalliance, nice word.
There's my English major kicking in. There's a sort of skepticism some quarters about, can Van Leeuwen pull this off? For me, it's hugely positive that we've got a local player that's got such big ambitions, and I wish.
But they're clearly optimistic about the market.
100%. Family owned and not corporate. For me, it's only good.
Okay. Cool. Any other personnel movements, maybe?
Yeah.
You mentioned Kanonkop, obviously a bit of a change there.
Yeah. So Aubrey Breslau stepped away at the end of 22.
Was it 20 years, I think, or just about?
Yeah, just about 20 years. I think his first vintage was 03.
Do we know what's to come there?
We look on with interest.
Okay, it's a developing situation.
Yeah, it's a developing story.
Yeah. 2 weeks from harvest.
2 weeks from harvest.
Okay.
No, look, they've got by all accounts, a crack winemaking team.
Okay.
If not a officially appointed head winemaker. But yes, they are.
It sounds like you think that the final iteration is not yet formed.
No, certainly not in my mind.
Okay.
Maybe in their minds, but again, are they communicating it?
Okay.
It's fascinating to see what the Ernie Alto Stellenzicht trio of properties or brands, all owned by the same German investor, are doing. They seem to be properly gearing up, and they seem to be making really smart wine across all those brands. Which is exciting.
Very nice.
Yeah. A Cake on the Simonsberg is now also foreign owned, and what I hear is the investment there is staggering, and they've got a top French consultant, overseeing the project. So it can be fascinating. Yes, it's only one property, but it goes towards, I think, the mood in the industry. It's like there's opportunity here.
You've spoken a lot about Stellenbosch. Let's maybe cast our eyes wider. Maybe we'll go south first to the Overberg. So Elgin and beyond. I'm not sure Elgin is Elgin qualifies Overberg.
Yeah. Or Cape South Coast, as they call them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm not sure if even Elgin's part of the Cape South Coast, is it?
Yeah,
I'm sure someone will let us know, and we'll know immediately as we stop filming.
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
Tilbach is coastal.
Yes. What's happening down that side of things?
So I think.
So we're talking about Elgin, we're talking about Walker Bay, Bot River, the Himmel and Aarde.
Honoured Davens Hockrivier.
Beneda.
Give it a go, David.
Beneda, Davens Hockrivier. So it's not Onder anymore, it's Beneda.
Oh, and then Davens Hawk or Davin Hawk?
Davin Hawks, I think.
Davin Hawks, okay.
It changed twice. It went from Davins Hawk Rivier to Davin Hawks Rivier, and they changed from Onder to Beneda. I've had to get my tongues around that a few times. Still can't say Cliff properly, but I can get that one. So we're talking about Elam as well.
So I think what's fascinating there.
It's a massive area.
It's a massive area.
But it is all very disparate.
But I think what we're seeing there is, one of the things we're seeing there, one of the important things we're seeing there, is that the South African national vineyard is very much in flux, and there's a lot of pioneering work being done, and
Sundas Cliff, Stanford area.
Motivate all the way to plate. I mean, Newstead making smart bubbly, and that's motivated in part by climate change. Those areas were previously summer rainfall, increasingly aren't.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So you can actually grow grapes.
So the rainfall's shifting in terms of the time of year, and okay.
Yeah, and the nerve-wracking thing is the Stellenbosch. The more established regions are becoming wetter and wetter in the growing season. We witnessed the 23 March rains where it started raining on the 1st of March and didn't stop raining until the 31st.
Yeah, and you can still see the marks on the mountains where there was landslides 2 years ago. Yeah. It looks like a big cat has scratched the mountainside. Bot River, it's a very important region in terms of the producers there. So you've got Cliff, obviously Castellum's there, Thorn and Daughters, Lyddite, Genevieve, Beaumont, of course.
So let's take Gabriel's Cliff as a case in point. I mean, is it all about Bot River? I mean, the Gabriel's Cliff vineyards are very much Bot River, but what we're seeing there is a collective using the cellar facility, which is a increasingly widespread phenomenon, so that really smart producers who don't want to incur the cost of their own cellar,
or physically can't.
Or physically can't. Sharing facilities So
I'm sure they'd want all
Yeah,
wine
sure.
SONA.
Yeah,
I don't think it's through like, oh, no, I don't want that.
well, except it's like, renting versus owning. There are pros and cons to both.
But my question's more in sort of
I
in
think
respect to
I think-
Pot River WO wines.
Right, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think Pot River is a very promising little part of the Greater Walker Bay. I think there's a sort of growing movement that's coming out of Walker Bay. Sour Vine in Stanford, you mentioned Sondagskloof, and I think it's Brunier and Hermanus Pietersfontein, so there are only two entities operating out of Sondagskloof, but boy, those wines are exciting. And there's a sort of growing sense of solidarity, esprit de corps that's spread across Walker Bay.
And it seems like, for me at least, the wines have a sort of a similar
Yes, agreed.
Edge to them.
Aesthetic.
As separate from, the coastal region. So Stellenbosch and Swartland, there is a very sort of...
For sure.
There is a difference in the way the wines feel and sit in the glass and work with food. So that's super exciting.
Agreed. I mean, shades of without getting carried away, shades of when the Swartland took off in the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's not fully formed yet, but there's a sort of shared outlook.
They're still working out what works, what doesn't. They haven't reached their organic limits there. Yep. The Hill-on-Arder Valley, all three wards, not that the Hill-on-Arder Valley exists, well, the valley, the upper valley, and then the ridge.
No, I mean, in previous sonas I've been...
You're off there next week, or is it? This week?
This Saturday for the Pinot Noir and Chardonnay celebration. And I've been outspokenly skeptical of South African Pinot Noir. I'm happy to say I think that it's much better than it was.
They won't see this before you go. So.
And I think that's due to hard work. I think it's due to getting healthy plant material. It's due to understanding which clones work where. I think clones with Pinot Noir are a much bigger deal than almost any other variety. So good on the Hill-on-Arder. I would, though, provide the caveat that you have to pay a crap load to drink good, relatively speaking. I mean, not relative to Burgundy.
Relative to other South African wines.
Yeah, in terms of what you're actually getting in the bottle.
You have to pay the Pinot tax.
The Pinot tax.
Yeah. What's interesting that when I said Hill-on-Arder, you went to Pinots first and not Chardonnay. Is that the spot for Chardonnay with maybe with Elgin, or is that?
No. So I would say Hill-on-Arder Chardonnay is very smart and probably of equal stature to their Pinots. But I think the point is Chardonnay does well more generally. So you mentioned Elgin, some very good Chard out of Stellenbosch. So I think it's more difficult to take ownership of Chard than it is to take ownership of Pinot.
You mentioned the Swartland. Let's just teleport there for a second. Been very historically important, especially in the new wave. What's your current take on what's happening in the Swartland?
It remains one of the most exciting areas.
Okay.
That said, if I was a Swartland producer, climate change would be even more of a headache than possibly for anybody else, in the sense that, those guys and girls are sort of harvesting at the beginning of February, and how long before they're harvesting in late January, and then when
are they harvesting already?
I don't know about this year, but if you take the last 10 years, they've got to get that fruit off pretty damn early. I don't know about this year, but if you take the last 10 years, they've got to get that fruit off. And next thing is it'll be it won't be Valentine's Day, it'll be Christmas Day.
I'll be asking for an exemption to say no, it was picked in the next year. But I mean, the Swartland's a massive place. Like the Cape South Coast is a massive place. There's people planting vineyards in different areas in Swartland, which is interesting. What's your take on that?
Exciting is the short answer. I think what we'll see is a more minute designation of areas.
So more wards, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, take Piquet Boerberg, which is 700, 800 meters above sea level, and where Stormkey of Mother Rock has set up. and
And Tinus and Hanukkah are there as well.
and Tinus and Hanukkah, and by all accounts, when Stompy angled for it to be demarcated, that caused a big stir because it was premature. But I mean, there's a case in point. I mean, it's clearly different to farming on the Paterberg,
Yes.
or Abbotsdale, So, and then of course, we've got Craig and Carla, almost just outside the Buccaneers Cliff, So, as you say, it's massive, and to lump it all together doesn't seem that useful. I mean, there's a lot of groundwork to be done, so to speak, but I don't think terribly further down the line we will see more carefully demarcated parts of it.
Okay. And there was this change in ownership in the Paterberg. Jebben and Arie bought a big tract of land. Was it? I'm sure we'll put it in a.
Well, those two do seem to be.
Have you been out there, seen those?
Yes, I have, and I mean they do seem, they're sort of, if not taking over the world, they're certainly taking over a lot of the Swartland. And of course, Eben, has built this terrific cellar, colloquially known as Opus 2.
Did you just make that up?
No, I can't claim that.
All right, Opus 2.
As my own. So clearly the Swartlands are succeeding, both in qualitative terms and in commercial terms.
Okay, cool. Let's bring it back to closer to us in Cape Town here. Constantia. It seems like that it's the rich cousin, but no one really invites them anywhere.
That's one way of putting it. Look, it strikes me that they all make Sauvignon and they all make expensive Sauvignon, so I'm sure they're doing just fine. Are you and I drinking those wines? Maybe not as much as other people are. I mean, what? No, look, you've got Chef's Warehouse.
I mean, Van der Constance is a world-class wine.
Yes, and I mean that is a massive success story of the modern era. I mean, world-class wine, priced accordingly, traded on Livex. So well done, Clarke Constantia. I mean, tip of the hat. But my sense is those farms are all doing just fine, and I was,
so business as usual, essentially. In Constantia?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the huge pressure there being urban development. It's like, however,
they're not chucking lots of vines in the ground. They're just sort of managing with what they have, or are they sort of expanding? They're trying.
I suspect the conversation confidential. Those conversations are confidential in the sense that, however profitable your Sauvignon Blanc vineyard is, or your Muscat vineyard is if a developer came along and said, "I'll give you 10 times as much money," then you're going to be tempted.
Fair enough. And another important area within this sort of a Cape Town is Durbanville,
which again, huge property development pressures. But that said, I mean, I think Teslo of Dimmersdal is
an
operator of note, a very astute producer, and doing very well. In the same breath, De Grendel, and I always say we should never forget that the much vaunted, highly regarded GS 66 and 68 came from Durban.
How much Durbanville wine are you drinking that you're paying for?
That's a good question. I'm not a Sauvignon Blanc hater. I like top end Sauvignon.
And that's the go-to for you?
Yeah, and the Savsem blends. I mean, I don't drink tons of Sauvignon, but yeah, I mean that's again Sauvignon country. Not to say they can't make red wines or anything else.
Trends. It's a shitty word, but what are you seeing in the glass in South African wine that over the last year that is significant?
Yeah, trends is a shitty word, and it's an easy way to embarrass yourself because you make a big call and then it never comes to pass. But that said, I mean, rosé has been a trend for a global trend for a good long while. And I,
Are you on board, Team Rosé?
No, so what I'm happy to report is that Wine Mag instituted its first category tasting of rosé at the end of 23, having not done it since '08, because the category was so appalling back in '08 that the Brains Trust at the time said took a unilateral decision that there was no point in looking at the rosé category, and that
Only took you 15 years.
it took us 15 years to reconsider it.
And to what?
And I'm very happy to report that the category has come on in leaps and bounds.
Okay.
I mean, can rosé ever produce mind-blowing wine? I suspect that intrinsically it can't. I mean, you know, I'll never say no to a bottle of Domaine Tempio, but I mean, the exception that proves the rule.
I'm gonna push back on that, but not now, because that'll be the most boring podcast of all time.
The future of rosé.
Yeah. What else?
What
else has been you've noticed in the last 24 months in the glass?
In the glass. I think Cab has got some challenges in the sense that being a late ripening variety, it's not manifesting as well as it might have done.
Yeah, you mentioned this in last year's podcast as well. You were sort of saying that you know, the greenness or the leafiness, or, you know, to use whatever term that you want to use, was becoming more pervasive and more of an issue. Is that getting
in the
worse?
most basic terms, I think getting optimal ripeness, whatever optimal ripeness is, or however you understand optimal ripeness, is bloody difficult by virtue of being a late ripening grape. So in 23 you have rain. You know, it doesn't like too much heat, it doesn't like too much rain. And the point, so, I mean, it's an issue for all the late ripening grapes, but, you know, Cab is...
It's a calling card of Stellenbosch.
It's a calling, and the world wants Cab, and the world measures you by your Cab, and fourth most widely planted variety. Okay. And, you know, so we can't ignore Cab, but I think there are some fundamental issues that need to be addressed.
Okay. And would you see those as just replanting to different varieties, or
I think
going up higher the mountain? What's the...
I think there's some definitely some viticultural challenges, but I defer to my viticultural colleague. I mean, I'd be fascinated to know what an Etienne de Blanche would think.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, maybe we're going to have him on next year with you, and we can just put us back in that place every time we hypothesize about something we don't know anything about. Yeah. And on the white side of things.
So, I mean, Chenin,
continues to pound it.
It's just such a, national treasure, and it does well everywhere, north, south, east, or west, and it does well off old vines, and it does well off young vines, and it's just quite extraordinary how well suited the grape is to local conditions, and the issue's always been that it's so stylistically diverse, so the consumer doesn't necessarily know what they're buying. To which I would say that's simultaneously its greatest asset. It's never boring. We should be so proud of our Chenin. As I say, Sauvignon, the fact that its plantings are just growing and growing tells you a lot. But at the top end, there's some really, it's not being made by rote. We're seeing alternative fermentation vessels.
I feel the top end of Sauvignon's increased quality drastically over the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
So that cliched super green high acid, is, if that's your thing,
it's turned into a vineyard wine rather than a winery wine.
If you really like super green high acid, you can still get it. But if you're looking for something a little bit more sophisticated, there are definitely more examples of it.
My wife Jeanette accidentally opened up she meant to open the bottle, but she didn't know what it was. It was a 18 Sonnachsluft by Trezone, and we didn't realise for half the bottle that it was the 2018 because it was so fresh and complete. And I thought, this is a really lovely bottle of wine. And that makes sense. It's it's a 6-year-old Sauvignon that is still at the top of its game. So that was lovely to see. So yes,
finish off varieties. We can't not talk about Pinotage. My great frustration with Pinotage is that it seems to have become, well, for some time now, the style that both producers and the market consider legitimate is very limited. And I'm not saying, and what is that style? It's a full ripe, heavily extracted, heavily oaked. And I'm not saying that's not a legitimate style, but I think it really narrows the possibilities for the variety. And I would make a plea for a more lighter bodied, earlier picked, fresher, more fruit driven style, which doesn't necessarily equate to a simpler wine. It just extends the...
Start giving them higher points, mate, then. Simply.
No, look, I mean, I think...
You drive the narrative as much as anybody.
No, fair enough, but I think...
and saying, saying no, we need to expand the diversity of high-end, of the style of high-end pinotage, but then only, really rewarding a style with optimum high points. I mean, do what you say, not,
Point made and point taken, but the list... There's some...
Because they're usually like, it just lacks a bit of grunt.
Well, no, I mean, I can thank you for according me and Winemakers so much influence over the market. And the thing is, we can only reward what's in front of you. And there aren't that many examples to engage with. And I mean, I really like what Lucinda Haynes is doing with Eedes. I really like what Raats is doing, well, with their B. Vintners Liberté example. The thing is, the list ends pretty quickly, and I think producers fear that it's so alternative that nobody will buy it, and I urge them to persist, and I think there is a market out there for it, and yes, I will try and score them up.
We're not just leaving varieties alone, but up-and-coming winemakers was my next point here. Is there any new winemakers on the scene, or new brands, or new wines that sort of spoke to you in 24 that had their debut, or close to their debut, maiden releases?
That's a good question. I mean, I think...
Or came of age, perhaps?
So the label that immediately jumps to mind is Damascene, but I think they've been around. If you haven't heard of Damascene, then you've been living under a rock. I mean, they're now pretty well established.
They're based in Oldham, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Got a very smart cellar in Oldham.
But fruit from everywhere.
Fruit from everywhere.
Yeah.
How new is a Van Lochenberg? How new is a David and Nadia? I mean, we possibly take them for granted if maybe, less highly involved, less involved consumers.
9, 10, 11, 12 years old is probably the answer there.
Yeah.
They're maturing, you think?
Yeah, but by the same token, Sadi's 25 years old. Again, I say there's a band of winemakers in their early 30s who are very smart, very energetic, that are worth keeping an eye on, and they might not have terribly many vintages behind them.
And who are they?
Well, so
give them a bit of a shout out, Christian.
No, Wine Mag undertook an initiative called the Next Generation Awards, whereby we looked at condition of entry was you had to be under 35 years of age, and that unearthed.
And what was the actual? It was the entry A bottle of wine they made, or
correct.
Okay.
And then, having said that, these guys and girls are all starting their own labels. A lot of them actually were formerly employed by privately owned wineries.
So, if they were still at the privately owned winery and like an assistant, could they provide a wine that was one of?
Yes, and I mean, we allowed some license there in the sense that the stipulation was you had to be involved from picking through to bottling, and then we took it on faith that. How else are we going to do it?
It's about recognition, not
correct.
Okay, yeah, cool.
And so,
what came?
So best winemaker overall was Natasha Jacka of Alinia.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Runner-up was Vusi de la Cuba of Vergenoegdslo.
Oh, okay.
Michelle Waldeck of Benguela Cove also featured. Riandri Visser, who perhaps is now a household name, of Cape Point Vineyards, and her sister were in the top 10.
Okay.
She famously was Duncan's assistant, Duncan Savage's assistant, and then took over from him.
Right.
Henry Ferreira of Kleine who's, they've got a very strong winemaking team, all relatively young, I think.
Okay.
But she came up from 2 wines. Other names I would mention, Kiara Scott looks like a really bright talent. She's just left Brookdale to go to Harsendal. Interesting.
Harsendal, where's Harsendal?
On the Bottlero Road.
Oh, on the other side?
Yeah.
Okay. The other side, they're going to love that.
I wish her all the best, because Harsendal's seen a lot of investment in hospitality, but haven't made a decent wine for a while.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. Kaylee Hutting, assistant winemaker at Kaapstad, has her own label called Rebel. That's very promising.
Yep.
Banele Vakele of Timbela Wines, Banele ex Duncan Savage's assistant. Definitely a personality to watch. I really like the wines that he's put under his own label. Natasha Williams is now taken. Her day job is at Hasha in
Yes.
And
that's a recent appointment, isn't it?
Fairly recent.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's the guys, Angles, a whole bunch of them operating out of Karabib. And I would mention Mahalia Khoshani of 3 Quarters in particular. She's quite dedicated about getting her name out there. And what I'd say to all of these youngsters is, come and show us your wines. Make sure, and not just the journos and the critics. You're not going to succeed if nobody knows that you exist. It seems fairly...
it's hard to buy a wine that you don't know about.
Exactly.
It's very difficult.
It seems fairly self-evident, but I don't know whether it's a shyness or a complacency or a, if to your point, if nobody knows you're out there, then you're not gonna cut it. Yeah.
And in terms of advice, in terms of stylistic, what would you say to these young producers? Was there any advice on the actual production side of things? Like overall, like in terms of aesthetics, or
that's a complicated question in the
philosophically.
So there's a surfeit of Chenin and of high quality Chenin grapes. So everybody tends to opt for a Chenin. At what point is the market saturated? And that's a moot question. My retort to that always is, you don't ask a Burgundy winemaker why they're making Chardonnay, or Austrian winemaker why they're making Gruner Veltliner. It's just what they do.
There are reasons for that, but yes, okay.
Yeah, no, sure. But I mean, again, so if you
I get your point.
If you don't make a Chenin and you somehow get your hands on hypothetically some Assyrtiko, then and it's your first vintage and nobody's ever heard of you before, then good luck. And when it comes to reds, it's I see so many Syrahs, so here's my Chenin and here's my Syrah, and very often they're well made, damn fine, on point, but
one of many.
Yeah. So your alternative is to go left field, but then you've got marketing challenges. So
fair enough. Okay, cool.
I would just add that there seems a rapidly evolving movement to embrace Colombard, to which I would say approach with caution, because there is a reason that for the last 125 years it's been planted for distilling purposes.
Yeah, name your top 5 Colombards. Good luck.
Sorry, Ian, Nordia.
Yeah. We've got questions from readers, viewers, audience questions.
Hit me.
Yeah, these are all just quick fire. Someone's asking about going on a blind date, which is
Tell Jan Ferreira.
pretty pretty hilarious to start with. But we've got 3 scenarios here. You are going on a blind date with a sommelier. What wine are you taking with?
Something super obscure with a TA of over 8 and a pH of under 3.
Okay. If you went on a blind date with a winemaker, what are you taking?
Something...
A prenup.
Well, not if it's with Brevet Rice. Something classic. Something... I mean, the temptation would be...
Like an old Paul sour or something like that?
Yeah. The temptation would be to, something like super geeky, like, hey man, like I've got this bottle of Jura. But no, it would be... I think referencing the classics with a winemaker is always interesting and
cool
and insightful.
And then the final blind date you're going on is with a new wine drinker. What are you taking?
With a new wine drinker. So something accessible but not facile.
Example?
Off the top of my head, and not just because Animo is hosting this, Luddite Sabatier White.
Perfect. The original question here was which brands will survive the next 5 years given the current state of the industry, but I'm going to change that question. Which brands do you think are going to flourish in the next 5 years, or what producers, not brands, but producers or people? Who's best placed to take advantage of the next 5 years?
So a slightly glib answer is those guys with the biggest marketing budgets, and I say that because when you look at
Distel, KWV, they're going to flourish.
No.
They've got the biggest marketing budgets, I think.
Well, you need good booze in the bottle. I mean that's a.
But this is why I'm pushing back.
No, fair enough. And whatever level of the market you're operating at, it's a non-negotiable. If you're gonna flourish, you have to nail the intrinsics. And you could say.
So whoever's putting good booze in the bottle and can actually tell people about it.
Yeah, but appropriate to your market segments. And you could say Van Leeuwen semi-sweet rosé illustrates my point. It's understanding what the target market wants. So you don't want to, further up the ladder. You don't want wine. You don't want a super complex wine at 150 rand a bottle. But you don't want a super simple wine either. It's also understanding the drinking occasion, understanding, getting your quality to price ratio right.
We're not asking how to flourish. We're asking who will.
The people who get that right.
Put your balls in the line.
No, to date, it's been Rupert and Rothschild. It's been Buchanan's Kloof. And I can't really see any reason why they won't continue to flourish.
Cool. If you had to bet on one cultivar or style to make a big splash in 10 years' time, in 2035 in South Africa, what would it be?
Okay, so over the last 10 years, which I think will only continue, is that we're seeing a shift away from big red towards white and rosé. And I think that's due to changes in lifestyle, globally speaking, in broad terms, generalizing. And I think that's going to persist. And why are we seeing that shift? It's nobody's got time to sell her or the resources to sell her. Buy an expensive wine, put it down for 10 years before you can drink it. Wine, all alcohol consumption is much more lifestyle associated, i.e. Wine bars / bistro type restaurants, immediate consumption. So it lends itself to wines that are accessible.
Okay, so if you had to bet on one cultivar or style, you can't just say white wine.
No. So Sauvignon Blanc's going to.
SB's going to make a splash in 10 years' time.
No, it'll be as strong as ever.
Yeah, but what's going to be new on the scene? What's going to no one knows, but this is the. Do you think Assyrtiko was going to nail it?
I can't really see Assyrtiko going.
Do you think Grenache Noir will become
because
more?
You've got to be into Assyrtiko if you know. It's geeky, It's like it's traditional home of Santorini, the island of Santorini, or in the Mediterranean, and the goblet vineyards and.
It's more about.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the question's more about South Africa in 10 years rather than.
I would imagine, and I mean this is total speculation.
Clearly.
Is that, as I say, how to make a fool of yourself is
Yeah, but this is what we're doing.
be a trend spotter.
Yeah.
No, I'd imagine that we'll see more. The Southern Rhone white varieties will persist.
All right.
And it would warm my heart greatly if we saw the white blends like Rocking Horse and Distit and Palladius being the original benchmark.
Yeah.
I think those. I still believe that they could make South Africa famous. I think they work extraordinarily well. So Shannon was
and they're unique enough as well.
And
Unique enough, and the quality's there.
Can't be imitated. Because they've got some Shannon in them.
Okay. There's some shitty questions about Australia retaining the Ashes, but we will. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I support Team South Africa and Eedes playing England.
Right. Well, you said the right thing there.
Look, the Ashes do present a conundrum.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Maybe best outcome would be a
frustrating
2-all draw and
frustrating drawn series.
Frustrating drawn series.
Will we see growth in the new wave producers? It says being exported, but I mean, is there room for more new wave producers?
No, so I think the export part of the question is key. I think we certainly will, presuming that individually and collectively we continue to tell the story effectively. And I, as an ex-copywriter, as a journo of many years, what does it mean to tell a story? It's bandied around. Marketing's all about storytelling, but it means being top of mind. It means capturing the imagination of consumers, trade, and media. Working on it constantly. Whatever else you say about Ibn Sadi, he is charismatic. He's lovely to listen to. I mean, even if half of what he says is bullshit. But we have to get those immeasurables, those intangibles, right. And I think we have done for a long time, but we need to continue to do that.
Is there room more for new wave producers to keep releasing new actual producers, or?
Well, I would say
decreasing vineyard area.
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I would say it's on them and Animo and the likes of Animo. I mean, it's like, it's your route to market. It's getting your distribution right. It's getting your packaging right.
There's a lot of points at which it can all go wrong. For
yeah.
Sure.
As a member of the media and as a critic, I mean, I will hopefully play my role. But I mean, it's not going to happen by accident.
No.
Right? Yeah.
What is your opinion on the role of sommeliers and wine service in restaurants?
Sure, for me, that's a...
Do they educate the customer at all, or is it the customer who is demanding better wine lists? That this question presumes that we are getting better wine lists. Are we on that?
No, it's a thorny question.
We agree to that or not?
Thorny question. Some of my best friends are sommeliers.
Do any of them work in restaurants?
I think anybody who starts out as a sommelier, anybody with half a brain quickly realizes that it's the hours are long and the pay is shit, so best to get out of hospitality.
Caveat in South Africa.
Caveat in South Africa. I worry that all the extensive efforts from many parties to grow this cohort of sommeliers hasn't really amounted to that much. Sorry, Tanashi and others. Well, Tanashi, case in point, has left being a som and now has his own wine brand. So, have we got better wine lists?
Is the industry better with sommeliers or without them?
No. Look, it's a worthy cause, and
yes.
I hope it succeeds eventually. But look, in fairness, a large part of the problem is the restaurateurs themselves, who are not wine invested. They see it as at best, as a way of bumping up their margins, and at worst, as an irritation. So there's a lot of structural issues that we have to address, and good luck to those who are working directly with uplifting wine service in this country. I'm glad it's not me.
So just to run a hypothetical or a situation past you, you've gone to a restaurant for dinner with your lovely wife Jane, and the sommelier comes up and presents you with the wine list. Are you asking their opinion, or are you just choosing off the list? Or
I don't know if I'm a good example because I can navigate a South African wine list better than others, but anecdotally I remember dining in France where the somm really made the evening, in that, we explained our budget, and it wasn't a lengthy conversation or a boring, drawn out process, but, he quickly ascertained that we didn't have a limitless budget, but we were adventurous wine drinkers, and he absolutely nailed it. And that, for me, is what a somm's supposed to do. I don't want the somm, dominating my evening. I'm not there necessarily to talk wine all night. I just want the right wine at the right price point to go with the dish that I ordered.
that sounds like it's an experience that hasn't happened that often in South Africa yet. The last of the viewer questions: whose wine reviews do you read? You sit there reading your own, or?
Yeah, I do, because they're often riddled with typos.
Yeah.
No, so the answer to that is everybody and nobody. Reading for leisure is more current affairs and sports reports. I think if you're highly involved in wine, professionally or out of your personal curiosity, it's fascinating to see who's shaping and who's not. But I don't have a subscription to Venice or any other of those titles.
Okay. The rise of imports. There's a few more importers on the scene now, us being one of them. Good thing, bad thing?
No, I think it's a great thing, in the sense that collectively we all need to calibrate all the time. I think it's a great thing in the sense that wine's a product of curiosity, and it allows all of us to drink more widely. I think the emergence of more important labels goes towards the fact that South African fine wine is now increasingly more expensive. So if you're good for R1,000 a bottle retail for South African, then you can start drinking international relatively easily. That said, I think R1,000 a bottle South African, you're at the very top of the pyramid, whereas R1,000 bottle of Burgundy can be quite ordinary.
Yes, no, Burgundy's outrageous, yeah. It's sort of a combination of points. I was going to bring up premiumization with you, things north of $1,000, because that seems becoming more and more common. And linked with that was the CWG, which has been more vocal and more visible over the last few years. I know you looked at did you have a look at, no, it was a...
I think it's a great thing in the sense that wine's a product of curiosity, and it allows all of us to drink more widely. I think there are the emergence of more important labels goes towards the fact that South African fine wine is now increasingly more expensive. So if you're good for R1,000 a bottle retail for South African, then you can start drinking international relatively easy. That said, I think R1,000 a bottle South African, you're at the very top of the pyramid, whereas R1,000 bottle of Burgundy can be quite ordinary.
Yes, no, Burgundy's outrageous, yeah. And that brings me on to another point that's related, premiumization. So wines sort of over $1,000, which are becoming more and more common. And linked with that is the CWG, or the Cape Winemakers Guild. Those two things are linked,
Sure.
and have been much more visible and vocal, and much more marketing has gone into them in recent times. I remember when I first arrived in South Africa, I didn't know about the CWG, because it was a very sort of insular, very sort of industry collective. What's your thoughts on those trends?
So the premiumization that we have seen in the last 5 to 10 years is got to be encouraging, in the sense that the general woes of the industry is that our wine is underpriced in world terms, and therefore not viable. Our wine is underpriced in world terms, and therefore not viable, simply put. So the fact that we're seeing wines approaching 1,000 rand, and in some cases over 1,000 rand, and heading towards 2,000 rand a bottle, is encouraging that there are more and more of them, and that there's a market for them. And I think very often there used to be vanity projects or speculative, at best speculative projects, and what was in the bottle didn't justify the price tag.
The packaging was always pretty schmick.
Packaging was always very bling. Super heavyweight bottles, super long corks. How long is your cork? But now what's in the bottle, and it's typically made in a luxury style, which I think is what.
A luxury style.
Yeah, a luxury style. So it's
like opulent.
Opulent,
okay.
Sumptuous. Rich.
No, we get the point.
but comparable to a Super Tuscan or a traditional Napa Valley cab, or
So mostly reds then?
Mostly reds.
Even though you think that the whites are the best wines, the premiumization of $1,000 a bottle is mostly red wine. And that's more market driven, I am assuming, rather than. Okay. So at some point, will the best quality wines, i.e. the white wines of this country, be the most expensive wines, do you think?
No, I don't think it's. I mean, I think there will be examples that attempt to get there. And I stand open to correction. If Ken Forrester FMC might well now be over 1,000 rand, or at 1,000 rand. But they're going to be the exception rather than the rule.
Okay. Vast majority red, and will continue to be.
Because of market forces, as you said.
All right. No problems at all. And CWG as an entity?
So CWG, it's a collection of our best winemakers, and it serves the purpose of being a ideas exchange forum, further, the education and
it's a club by invite only.
It's essentially a club by invite. I don't know if they would appreciate that description. But what they have done they
couldn't refute it, is my answer.
No.
I don't mean that disparaging. I think that's just a description of it.
I think they would like to sort of see themselves as a more noble and worthy cause.
I'm not saying they're not noble or worthy. I'm just saying, but it is a club by invite only.
Groucho Marx's words come to mind: "I would never belong to a club that would accept me as a member."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So they have their annual auction, and those wines, fetch a huge premium, which always tickles me, because I'm not sure that very many of the wines on auction are that much better than the standard labels. In many cases, the wines are a barrel reserve of the standard label. To give them their due, what they've done is they've turned the CWG with its beige label and the key into a brand, and into a desirable brand that a certain market segment are happy to pay a premium for, a big premium.
And are you seeing those pop up Is it just at the auction that the prices are large? I mean, do you see, and maybe a question for one of the guys at the Strauss auction perhaps, for resale value?
Where do they go? I mean, I think into private collections, but I think there are also some, I mean, Singita back in the day used to take a lot. I think Miguel Chan of
Santh and Son.
Of Sun International,
Sogo,
whatever
Sun.
they call themselves.
Yeah, I can't keep up.
No, me neither. You know, has bought a fair amount in his time.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, we're almost to the end, so we can get some food soon. What are you drinking at the moment? Not like right now, but what's your current sort of go-to wines that you're drinking at the moment?
I'm pretty promiscuous, so it'll be Chenin today, Chardonnay tomorrow, Sauvignon Blanc the next day.
Okay. Super picky.
No, not. I mean, I'm constantly reviewing.
Yes.
And I'm.
So you have constant wines coming into
Yes.
your environment.
Yes.
After that is done, what are you drinking?
I'm a Chenin slut to sort of pick up on the promiscuity line of thought.
Yeah. That's the rumours I keep hearing. So yeah.
But I think everybody knows that. I mean, I really adore Chenin.
So the go-to is a Chenin, like
Pretty much.
yeah.
Red. I think Syrah is by far our strongest category, and I'm speaking in a academic sense or a professional sense. I love drinking Syrah, but I love old school Stellenbosch Cab.
Yeah, you're more likely to pick up a good Syrah, but you'd rather have if choices were there.
No.
I'm trying to understand your.
No, what I'm saying is, I'm far. I like hipster new wave, 11.5% all the way through to, big old Stellenbosch Cab. I think, whilst our whites are better than our reds, I think our reds are. The different drinking occasions demand different reds far more. Whites are more versatile, and what am I trying to say?
Whatever's in the fridge, essentially.
Whatever's in the fridge, spice, or as the mood takes you, variety is the spice of life.
So what are you drinking? Everything.
Well, what don't I drink? What don't I drink?
Yeah, what are you steering away from?
Poor old Merlot remains bloody challenging, and I mean.
There's some select few really very.
Yes, shout out to Shannon. I believe Kanonkop is culling Leibach Clarke, which is a pretty smart wine. They want to put that fruit into more Kanonkop.
Thelema Merlots.
Thelema Merlot for sure. So they.
I drank that on New Year's Eve. It's delicious.
But it's not a very long list. There are definitely.
No, it's not a long list. Yeah. Okay.
And on a Tuesday night with some spag bowl, I'm not necessarily opting for a Merlot.
Okay. Final question. Big picture. You are an omnipotent being. You can change the South African wine industry however you like. You can plant different varieties. You can put a different system of government in place, or a system of laws, or what changes are you making? What would be most beneficial?
Wow.
Big question.
Well, I think that.
Apart from more Chenin for Christian.
No, I think we.
You'd rip out all the Colombard? Would that be gone straight away?
Well, I was going to say we need to.
Rip out all the Merlot as well?
There's a lot of structural issues that need to be addressed that aren't being addressed as quickly as any of us might like. That said, there are, in one sense things change very slowly, in another sense they change very fast. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is, "The days drag by as the years rush by." Not so long ago, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, 3/4 of the national vineyard was Semillon. Now Semillon's hardly planted. So things do change. But yeah, is there too much Colombard planted right now? I would think there is too much Colombard planted right now. Our top.
Would you plant more Chenin in its place, or what would you do?
No, I think we've probably got enough Chenin.
Okay. What else are you putting in there then?
No, if getting our price per litre across the board getting it up is the solution to all our industry challenges. Simply put, I think it is.
Right.
Then yeah, you want to you know, more of the fringe varieties or lesser known varieties, alternative varieties, without going super alternative. So, you know, and what do I mean? I think Grenache Noir and Grenache Blanc have got enough of a global following and are well suited enough to this country that we could, you know, that they might work out very well. And you know, there's a very concerning you know, stat for me that our top 8 varieties out of 90,000 hectares make up 80% of our plantings, and that seems, the weighting seems wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. It's 8 varieties essentially is the industry. So very, very interesting. Is there anything that that we should be speaking about that we aren't speaking about as much, or not enough before we sign off?
I think this comes up every year. We you know, transformation has to be on the agenda. The industry across the board is too white. And I don't just say that to be politically correct. If you take COVID, the industry really struggled to engage with government. And I don't think there was essentially ill will there. It was the industry was irrelevant to government. And you know, we need...
Because of lack of transformation, you think?
Well, more because of a lack of... you know, I don't think that the industry is being punished for a lack of transformation as such. Rather, there was no rapport or no
dialogue.
No dialogue. No, it never has been.
Yes.
You know.
But you're linking that with transformation.
Yeah. So I think you know, as sooner as the industry is more representative, the more buy-in we'll get from government, from consumers. You know,
representative of the Western Cape?
Representative of the country.
Okay.
You know, taken as a whole. Yeah, I mean, strategically, being white-owned can't, in the long term, be a good thing.
So it's the ownership is the issue, or participation. I'm trying to sort of peel back the layers of it. Yeah. Trying to peel back the layers of it.
Ownership and participation. So ownership at the top level, down to, you know, as we discussed, the on-con and off-con staff.
Yeah, it encompasses hospitality as well.
Yeah. If you walk into a supermarket in the Mall of Africa and you want your sales assistant to be speaking the same language as you literally and figuratively, I would have thought.
South Africa is a notorious, it's a beer country. What would happen, you think, if we turned it into a wine country?
I think the answer's in your question. We're a beer country. And there are lots of historic and cultural factors as to why that is. And that ain't going to change anytime soon. But that said, there's no reason for those of us invested in the wine industry not to try. You know, obviously, if consumers at all levels of the market are better disposed towards wine, it would be good for everybody.
A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Thank you very much, Christian Eedes of WineMag. Thank you very much for watching and listening to us rabbit on about the state of the nation of the South African wine industry. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.